or even if you make mistakes. I love you anyway.
So I don't know that that was an invitation for me to make more mistakes, but it was a pre-forgiveness if they happen to happen. Welcome to Real Adventures with Michael and Lisa.
Yeah, we want to tell you a story today. We want to tell you a story about a real adventure that we experienced last week.
Yes, last Wednesday. And maybe so we had a week and a half that was really intense, lots of stuff going on.
Lots of coaching sessions, some conflict. You were busy all weekend.
The conflict was pretty minor, but we were just a lot of work. We were exhausted, full schedule, had a couple moments of conflict that we did a pretty good job with, but we were just worn out. And so I had a great idea. I had created a fair bit of the busyness. So I'm like, okay, what can I do to romance my wife a little bit, give her a little bit of fun in her life, and just let her relax and get away?
He was going to take me on a date.
Yes, but this wasn't just an ordinary date.
No,
I had plans. So we have a Land Cruiser that we like to go off-roading in and camping and all that. It's a little chilly for camping, but we thought, and you can't see, but there's some mountains behind our house. Beautiful mountains. And there's a whole off-roading area, and there's like hundreds of miles of trails. And there's one road I hadn't done yet that's about probably 20 to 30 miles long, 20 miles long, that goes from Shasta Dam all the way through to
French
Gulch and then back
Whiskey
Whiskey Town and back into town. So my plan was I wanted to do that dirt trail, and then I wanted to come back into town and stop at Woody's for a date night dinner. They have the best tater tots on the planet there. We were going to get a little off-roading, which we both enjoy. We'd disconnect from society, get out in the middle of nowhere.
Now what he didn't say was he also packed an air mattress, some sleeping bags, and a bottle of Prosecco just in case we found a really cool place to turn off and have a little sexy time.
Yeah, a little boom boom in the back of the car because
we're married.
It's great. And no one's going to be out there this time of year. It's going to be private. So I was ready for some fun. And the sunset I knew would likely happen sometime along the trip. So I was thinking, it'd be perfect. Anyway, we found a nice viewpoint. We're going out there. We made about 6 or 7 miles in. We stopped at this viewpoint, took pictures, and Lake Shasta in the background, Mount Shasta. And then we went up to Mount Bahomatash, the highest point, and we got some more. We're like, it's beautiful. And the sun was setting, and it had just set, but it wasn't quite a point where we could really orchestrate everything. So I'm like, okay, well, let's keep going. And we put it in maps, and we're going down, and I tell you, there's even snow in some places. Beautiful
but it wasn't really
snow.
On the road. It was in the shade, so we thought we're good. And then we went around the corner on the other side of the mountain.
Yeah, there's a few places of snow. We went through a snowdrift, and it was great. Someone else had gone through it before, so it was easy. Went down another snowbank, and then behind the mountain, it got a little deeper, and it really got fun. And we're going down the mountain, about 100 yards in, I hear this, and the traction control is working in our Land Cruiser to pull us down the mountain through the deeper and deeper snow. And I start having this thought, this is probably not going to work out real good right now. It's getting deeper as we're going forward, and I'm going down the hill, and my traction control is struggling to keep us going.
Now, I had unbuckled and I was in the back seat because there was this little squeak that I was trying to figure out, in the back seat what was causing the squeak. So I actually wasn't even paying attention.
I'm watching her butt wandering around in the back, and she's kind of trying to find stuff, and she's leaning over the seat, and I'm like, that's cute.
So all of a sudden, the car stops, and he's like, babe. And I think he's kidding because we just got new tires on it a couple of months ago, and I'm thinking
off-road tires.
I'm thinking this Land Cruiser can do
anywhere.
Anywhere. Yeah. And he's like, he got a little more serious.
Just a minute. And I hopped out and I walked around the car, and there was a crust of ice like this, and then it was powder all the way down to the ground. It was 12 to 18 inches deep, depending on where you were around the car. And so we were sitting belly down on the hard packed snow. So I got back into the car. I'm like, babe, I think we might just park right here for the night because we're not going anywhere. The sun just set. There's still a little bit of daylight, but it's going to disappear in the next few minutes.
Yeah, he had locked the is it front differential? And what'd you lock? You locked something up.
Yeah, everything that I could do without getting out of the car and changing the weather, I had done.
Yeah, it wasn't working. So he's like, babe, we need to hike back up to the summit and we need to make some phone calls.
Because that's the last place we had cell service.
Yep, so we hiked a third of a mile back up and we made some calls to our kids and some friends and we got to spend the night.
So the whole part, obviously, maybe we should call it real misadventures with Michael and Lisa, with Michael. Because whose idea was this? It was my idea. Why did I have the idea? Because I wanted to bring her some fun. I wanted to reduce some of the stress in her life.
He wanted to connect with me.
Yes, and did I do that? Kind of, but we had an interview the next morning scheduled. We have kids that go to school. We had to organize all that stuff as if we weren't going to be making it back before morning because we didn't know if we would get search and rescue out there for us.
We did not plan for this kind of adventure. I didn't have a coat. We didn't have any food. We had a quart of water, a bottle of Prosecco.
And breath mints. But we both had been wanting to release a few pounds, so it wasn't the end of the world. We could start our diet early. But here's the deal, is we walked back down the trail. Because we had a quarter mile to walk back down to the car, and we had our flashlights on our lights on our phones on to see back down the trail because it was that dark. And I got to be really real with myself. I didn't talk with Lisa, but I was exhausted from a week and a half. And I knew that some of the conflict we had, Lisa was really hurting around that, and it wasn't finished. The resolution wasn't finished. And I had just wanted to create an experience so she could experience some fun as we're going into some more healing and some more tough conversations coming up. And I just wanted this to be a moment of breather. And I blew it. I blew it. I got us stuck. And what was going to be an evening adventure with a nice evening out for dinner, we're now sleeping in the snow an hour and a half from the nearest car driving to us. And it ended up taking 21 hours before we were rescued. And I knew it was going to be rough. I didn't know it was going to be quite that rough. But as I was walking back down the hill to the car, I got to feel the weight of all that disappointment. And there was a little shame in there because no, I can't even get an adventure right. I can't even get a time out time for fun right. I can't even get a date out to Woody's right. Like I had all these thoughts coming in like, I've already put enough weight on her the last week and a half, and here I've dumped this on her too.
Have any of you guys ever felt that way? Like you can't get it right, no matter what you try to do, it doesn't work out. You try to plan something great for your spouse and it goes wrong and it wasn't your intention, and then conflict happens. And well, he was carrying that disappointment and some of that shame back into the car, which I thought I was pretty neutral.
Well, here, just a second, because I didn't carry it into the car. I actually, as I was walking down, I allowed myself to feel everything. I felt the weight of all the disappointment. I actually came up with some now our daughter's actually gonna have to take the boys to school in the morning, and that wasn't her plan. And my failure caused her inconvenience too. And I actually allowed myself to feel all of that discomfort, all of that pain, all of that disappointment. And then I got to just be with my heart. And I didn't cry because the wind was blowing so hard and it was so cold I would have had icicles down my cheek. Maybe I did cry and it just sublimated. That wasn't that cold. But I actually got to be with my heart. And I got to remind myself, like, Michael, I still love you. God still loves you. You're still okay. You're still valuable. You're still worthy. You just made a mistake. And you did make a mistake. You made a pretty good one. But it was a mistake. It didn't change who I was. It didn't change my value or my worth. And I was able to, by the time we got to the car, I was able to be like, okay, Well, I'll set up the air mattress and the sleeping bag and get that set up. And we can hop in the car, and we have our Prosecco, so we'll have a good time drinking Prosecco. And we'll be able to have our evening. And I was able to step into that moment with peace and value, knowing I messed up. I'm still okay. This is a big inconvenience for us, and there was a lot more inconvenience to come the next day to remedy the whole situation. And I'm still okay. I'm still worthy of love. I'm still worthy of acceptance. That whole journey is an internal journey with God that I get to reestablish who I am and what I'm worth. I didn't even need to externally process it until later, when I could just talk about my journey that I'd gone through. And of course, there's a lot of other stuff. Lisa got to talk about her stuff and everything as well, and what she experienced. But it was just an incredible opportunity for me to own me and to validate and to be with, so that I could be with Lisa.
I had a slightly different experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell your experience?
I think some of it came in the car.
There was more in the car, yes.
Yeah, I feel like you carried some of that in the car. And it leaked out. And it created conflict. And we didn't have any sexy time. We got in our sleeping bags and we didn't even snuggle. Thankfully, we were warm. But that is not the norm for us. We normally snuggle every night. And so that was hard. That was hard. Because I felt like I was in a very neutral place. I wasn't blaming him. I wasn't hugely upset. It was an inconvenience, but I was okay. I knew we were going to be okay. Yeah. So I had a slightly different experience.
What was your experience?
I just told you.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was some of the emotional journey or some of the feelings that you felt there?
I felt like everything was fine, and then we had a first glass of Prosecco and we were laughing and we were having a good time, and then we had a second one, and I said something to you and you were triggered by it, and I was like, oh, okay. He did not hear my heart, and I was like, okay, so I'm just gonna go to sleep, because that late at night, it is not a good idea to, especially if you've had a little bit of Prosecco with nothing to eat. It's not a great time to process conflict, and that was your experience at the moment. So I didn't feel like what I had said was not intended to be condescending, or so I knew that wasn't my heart. But I didn't want to continue the conversation, and I still would have been good with snuggling, but you weren't. And later you said that you had some fear, and I think that there was some, I think you felt like you let me down way more than what I felt.
Probably so, yeah.
And I felt like that's what came into the car, was that you were feeling really bad about it, or you were like, maybe there was a projection, like you thought I was actually really upset or really disappointed or really afraid or something. And so that, because you even later said that you were afraid to even initiate sex because you thought that I was upset or would reject you. And I was like, no, that wasn't even true for that moment. And so anyway, it's one of those moments where you think everything's fine, and then all of a sudden it's not, and you don't know how to quickly navigate yourself back. And those can be really frustrating moments, and I felt like we experienced one of those. And oftentimes that's just the enemy who's throwing in lies for us, and it's not the reality, right? It becomes situational. It's the enemy who's throwing stuff in, and I feel like in that situation, he won. Now, the next day, we both chose a much better attitude. We worked together. We tried digging ourselves out. We hiked to the top, and someone came and got us, and it was fine. But I feel like that could have been a really amazing, a more fun adventure for us to experience. So.
Yeah, it's important. So even in this video, we had different experiences. And it's super important to listen to the experiences. Because the truth is, like, my experience was real for me. It wasn't the same experience Lisa had. And Lisa's experience was really real for her. And even though, like, this is the first time I had heard part of her experience, but it's super important to, like, knowing each other's hearts, being available to listen to each other's hearts, to validate what's been said, is what makes connection possible. We had lived most of our lives with thinking that we had to work out the surface details, the things that you could see, the details like making sure the ride worked okay and we didn't get stuck, making sure those details happened. And what we're discovering as we keep moving forward is the part that's really important is choosing to go deep in our own hearts and express those things, and then to be available to listen. And there's times like some of what I said didn't line up with what Lisa remembered. And it would be nice if it did. But in some of the things that Lisa mentioned, I didn't remember it working out that way. But that really isn't important. It would be nice. And that's what our whole grid has been based on for so long. But the truth of what's really important is for us to care more for each other's hearts and how we're doing, and to maintain this connection and the value for us being together and wanting to understand and to know each other.
So this video didn't quite end the way that I was expecting, and we totally blew over our time. But what is it called? It's called Real Talk with Michael and Lisa. So today you got a dose of real, where for a moment there we were not on the same page. And yeah, so we still have more opportunity to unpack some stuff, to discuss, to learn more about each other. And so I'm sure you do too in the relationships that you have. But guess what? We're still choosing connection. Michael, I choose you.
I choose you too. Matter of fact, just a minute. I love you more right now than I did before this video started.
Thank you.
And we don't have to film another video, but if we did, I would love you even more after that one. And I know that because it's a choice that I've made.
And babe, I love you even when things don't go as planned, even when
misadventures happen.
Decisions you make don't go well, or even if you make mistakes. I love you anyway.
So I don't know that was an invitation for me to make more mistakes, but it was a pre-forgiveness if they happen to happen. And I guess at the end of the day, it's not a true adventure if it can't go wrong. Small solace. Anyway, we thank you so much for listening, and we thank you if you stayed through this whole thing for trusting us. And you know, in the middle of this video, we didn't know where it was going to go. And we both had different ideas. So listen, don't ever disconnect just because there's differences. Don't ever disconnect just because of confusion or a surprise moment. But find peace. Take care of yourself really well. We love you all so much.
Take care. Okay, we're good.